Everyone, I'm Matt Ford, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. I said I wouldn't do any more live shows, but here we are once again, so hopefully the train won't go too far off the tracks. Last week, the Congressional House Oversight Committee held a hearing on UAP. Retired Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, former government official Lue Elizondo, journalist Michael Shellenbeger, and former NASA Administrator Michael Gold testified in front of Congress with one clear message. UAPs are real, and we can no longer ignore this problem, despite the best efforts of the Pentagon and the IC to explain this away as stuff like balloons, seagulls, airborne trash, whatever. Congress, of course, smells BS from the Pentagon. Their excuses stink, and the source of this stench comes from the Pentagon's in-house bullshit factory, otherwise known as AARO, or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. AARO, led by its former director, Dr. Kirkpatrick, perfected the art of shoveling cow dung to lawmakers and showing members of Congress what a UAP historical report written by a fifth grader looks like. Last December, Dr. Kirkpatrick pulled the ripcord, resigning from AARO, sporting a nice golden parachute, landing himself a cushy, well-paid job at Oak Ridge National Laboratories while continuing to shovel conspiracy theories about UAP, likely at the direction of the gatekeepers of the deep legacy UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Speaking of gatekeepers, on the day of last week's congressional hearing, I issued a statement to members of Congress revealing that one of the UAP legacy program gatekeepers was on Dr. Kirkpatrick's double secret advisory board. Multiple confidential sources informed me that the former head of the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology was on Sean's secret panel. So is think about it this way, the very Pentagon UAP office, which is supposed to function as the authorized recipient of classified whistleblower testimony, and I remind you, the identities of the whistleblowers are supposed to remain secret, is being advised. Think about this, is being advised by one of the primary UAP gatekeepers for the Deep Legacy program. His name's Glenn Gaffney. You cannot make this stuff up. Today, a new director of AARO, Dr. Jon Kosloski, will be testifying at the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities hearing chaired by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Will AARO turn a new page under this new leadership? I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic, but today we will air this hearing live and we'll be joined by two special guests, Sean Cahill and Vinnie Adams, to unpack the goods. But first, please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons on YouTube. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this episode. You can also find us on X at Good Trouble Show and everywhere else on the internet at The Good Trouble Show. You can also find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Search for The Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford. And as always, if you would like to chip in to help keep the lights on, you can become a Patreon member of The Good Trouble Show by going to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. Sign up and you can support our work. And we always need help with that. Our guests today are no strangers to the world of UAP. They've both been on the Good Trouble Show. Please welcome on your left, retired U.S. Navy Chief Master at Arms and witness to the famous Tic Tac event, Sean Cahill, and on your right, the host of Disclosure Team, and who was actually the very first guest on the Good Trouble Show, Vinnie Adams. Guys, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good to be here.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. It looks like we're off to a rip-roaring start. As I said, welcome back to the show. I want to, before we dump into to this hearing here, and I'll bring it up. We still have the splash screen. Before we had nothing but static. So at least we have the splash screen. So that gives us some hope. But anyway, I want to talk about last week's hearing. Sean, what was your takeaway overall of the whole hearing? Do you think it moved the ball forward in terms of disclosure and overall public awareness of the UAP issue?
I did. I think that what was said at the hearing is incredibly important. What we witnessed, as I'm fond of saying, was competent authority, giving acknowledgement of probable non-human intelligence, specifically at least a crash retrieval program that ended up with biological retrieval as well. And I think having those things said in a public forum is very important. As always, we're very interested in what the closed-door sessions afterward might yield.
Yeah, absolutely. Vinnie, what was your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, you know, these are some witnesses that we would have liked to have seen some time ago. It was really good to see Lue Elizondo under oath testifying, you know, with some really straight to the point facts and things that he stated. I think, like Sean said, it's important that things are happening behind closed doors. You know, I don't think there was a closed session at the time on the day, but I was led to believe that there were some individual meetings with some people. So hopefully the relevant information is now in the right hands to progress this forward.
Yeah, and I thought too, like the overall like grouping of the witnesses. I mean, Admiral Tim Gallaudet, I think his testimony was super important in that he brought up something that we were aware of before, that he went into AARO for a meeting, and he felt like the whole thing was just a giant psychological operation that he was being subjected to, where they were trying to convince him that the Tic Tac was a balloon or blue technology or whatnot. Now, this was before Jon Kosloski, Dr. Jon Kosloski. This was the interim director of AARO. Tim Phillips. But I thought that Admiral Gallaudet's testimony was great. Of course, Lue's was great. That for me was the highlight. And I have a question for both of you. What was the thing that you were most surprised about to hear coming out of the mouth of Lue Elizondo? Sean, we'll start with you.
Well, I wouldn't say I was so much surprised as I was invigorated by his very direct answers to very direct questions. Mr. Elizondo's put enough effort and enough investigation into this subject to understand that it's broader than the so-called cover-up that gentlemen like Mr. Kirkpatrick are fond of moving forward. There's more to it behind this, and Mr. Elizondo gave him some very serious answers.
He did, and I think for me, like one of my big takeaways was the fact that he supported essentially what David Grush had claimed in terms of a crash retrieval program and all of that stuff. Vinnie, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly that. You know, Lue was asked about the crash retrieval reverse engineering, and you know, he stated that he had signed some documentation or something in the past to not talk about it. Therefore, if there's nothing to see, and how is there something to sign to not talk about it?
Do both of you feel, what's your take in terms of, did this move the ball down the field? Was it as far as you thought it would move? Of course, I think a lot of us, we hope that these hearings will be like some kind of big bombshell. And I think in a way, like the way I kind of look at it is the hearings are the input, and the legislative action is the output. So people come in, they testify to Congress, and hopefully at the end of the day, there's some legislative action on that. What do you think, Sean, as far as like, did it move as far as you would have liked? Did it meet your expectations? What are your feelings on last week's hearing in that regard?
I felt really good about everything up until the point where lawmakers started asking, how do we move forward with this? Who do we go to? Who do we talk to? For example, the chair of today's hearing, Senator Gillibrand, knows exactly how to get in touch with Lockheed Martin, as she has landed $1.3 billion deals within her district for them. So getting the CEO of Lockheed Martin under oath and subpoenaed and in front of, excuse me, not in that order, of course, subpoenaed under oath and in front of Congress should be a simple, normal daily task for these folks. I'm not sure why they don't know where to look when they're being told. If I may add, the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Secretary of the Air Force. Those people can and should be able to answer the questions at least that Congress has, especially behind closed doors.
Vinnie, how about you?
Well, I noticed at one point Representative Burleson, I think it was, said, you know, we're holding these hearings to get answers from you to point us in the right direction. So hopefully they've got some more answers. They can start honing in on the gatekeepers, knocking on the right doors, asking the right questions. That way, this ball will continue to move down the field. Otherwise, we're going to just be stuttering and staggering every kind of 12 to 16 months between the next hearing. So fingers crossed we have some constant motion happening with people really going at it.
Agreed. Okay, so today's testimony, and we'll cut to it as soon as it goes live, but this is the hearing of activities of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is supposed to start in a few minutes. We understand that it may be running late because the closed session occurred before this. But for the folks at home that have no idea what AARO is or who Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick was, despite my my very flowery description of Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, let's talk about AARO. Sean, if you would, and kind of like how its previous director, Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, seemingly was intent on getting to the truth of this whole UAP thing.
Well, I have to check my notes here because I always mess it up. But the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office was set up in 2022. Mr. Kirkpatrick was placed at the head of it, and they were tasked with, first of all, their title, which was all domains, meaning air, sea, land, space, etc., of scrubbing the records, the historical records, and finding a good picture of what was going on with UAP. That's the simplest way I can put it. And Dr. Kirkpatrick seemed to have taken the job very lightly. At first, he seemed like he was going to put his due diligence in as a public servant, but then as time wore by, he seemed to engage with a different aspect of it, seemed to want to call out ufology and the people that were working on this as being crackpots, etc. And the air of for lack of a better word, a dismissal seemed to come over the way that he was treating this, very flippantly and not seriously whatsoever. And I think that's one of the reasons he's no longer the director.
I would certainly hope so. I mean, Vinnie, like when I started hearing and it all started with this LinkedIn post where he just seemingly like went off the rails. I believe it was July of last year, June, July, somewhere last year. It seemed that he literally flipped on a dime, because I remember in one of his reports or commentary, he was speaking about like, flying metal orbs, things of that nature, stuff that obviously deserved some investigation. And then it was like he just flipped on a dime. Any thoughts as to why? Do you think someone got to him? Do you think he just changed his mind? Or I don't know. I can't figure it out for the life of me.
No, it is very difficult. I mean, if you just look back to, I think it was the 19th of April, 2023, with the first sit down he had in the Senate committee with Senator Gillibrand, he was airing some frustrations there with the lack of authorities that he had going after some of the data which he felt he needed for his investigations with AARO. Maybe, I think it might have even been he just didn't have any Title 50 authorities at that time. So he seemed frustrated and needed to get them put into place to be able to gather all the information to really dig into the investigations. So maybe his frustrations just continued and grew from there. But it was quite a short tenure, really. And a lot of it seemed rushed. A lot of it seemed frustrated. And I think we are better seeing the back of him now.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think the thing that really sort of surprised me the most with all of this was this kind of like continual sort of disparaging of members of Congress, people like David Grush and others by Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick. It was, even though he had exited the DOD and was working for the Department of Energy, it was like he continued to be on this mission of really spreading conspiracy theories about the whole UAP thing, saying it's all circular reporting and whatnot. I mean, Sean, did any of that just seem odd that he was continuing to message while he wasn't working for the Pentagon? You would think that they would have shut that down.
It seemed very odd to me, and not to be very careful with this. It sure seems like somebody that got put on the proverbial payroll to just start putting the BS out there, because that's not what an investigator does. And unless they called in someone that they knew was a yes man, that when he went to investigate these things was going to take the status quo answer of nothing to see here. If that's not the case, I have to ask, is he negligent or is he willfully ignorant? I can't tell with Dr. Kirkpatrick, but the way he has acted since leaving the position is starting to make me think that it's more negligence and more willful ignorance combined, that there is something, there's an inside play of some kind here.
Gotcha. Okay, so I printed out Dr. Jon Kosloski's bio, and that of course, as I understand it, he is going to be the sole witness at this hearing. So Dr. Jon T. Kosloski serves as the director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, otherwise known as AARO. Prior to that, Dr. Kosloski held technical and leadership positions within the Research Directorate of the of the National Security Agency. In that capacity, he led advanced mission-oriented research in the fields of networking and computing and served as a subject matter expert in the area of free space optics. And I think probably sounds like somewhat like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick with all of his laser work. He was advising various DoD agencies. In addition to his optics research and crypto mathematics, Dr. Kosloski invented an advanced language agnostic search engine and served at the DoD Special Communications Enterprise Office. Goes on to say here, he received a bachelor's degree in mathematics and physics from Cal State University. Oh, here we go. Looks like we are going to the hearing. And if for some reason the feed drops out, everyone just tune into it at home.
All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, an office Congress established in the fiscal year 2022, NDAA, to investigate this very serious problem of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAP. Dr. Kosloski comes to AARO from the Research Directorate of the National Security Agency, where he worked in areas of optics research and crypto mathematics. He previously served at the DoD Special Communications Enterprise Office. We look forward to regular engagements between you and the committee. When unidentified anomalous phenomenon enter our airspace, we need to know about it. We need to identify it, but in order to do that, we need to reduce the stigma and credibility challenges associated with these events. Our service members, scientists, foreign partners, and the general public need to know that their reporting, research, and analysis will be taken seriously and acted on in good faith. In the spirit of transparency, AARO recently released a consolidated annual report just a few months after releasing the first volume of a historical record report in March of this year. These public documents help highlight the challenges still facing this office, including the lack of timely and actionable sensor data, the need to revisit cases placed in the active archive, and the importance of improving reporting sources both in the interagency and internationally. In this hearing, I want to probe a series of specific issues. First, as incidents at Langley and elsewhere have demonstrated, unmanned aerial systems, or UAS, continue to pose significant threats to our national security. In addition to safety of flight issues these UAS create for our own pilots and aircrew, the UAS present clear and undeniable counterintelligence concerns around some of the most sensitive airspace. While standard UAS are not part of AARO's mission, your work on sensors at military installations across the country will be critical to making sure that we have the domain awareness necessary to accurately identify and track these objects. I expect your office to also pay close attention to any anomalous characteristics that these systems could present in the future. Second, I look forward to your presentation of 3 case studies demonstrating cases that AARO has resolved, including the Go Fast, which is one of the most prominent UAP cases. However, I believe it is important to acknowledge ongoing public interest in the Nimitz incident, the gimbal video, and other prominent UAP cases, and for AARO to share what it can about those cases as well. It's also important that AARO speak to unresolved cases and what types of anomalous activity have merited further analysis. And while I know AARO has gone through a period of transition over the past year, it is important to share these disclosures, both resolved and unresolved cases, with the public, even when a Senate hearing is not scheduled. Lastly, while some have been hesitant to come forward to AARO in the past, I hope that potential individuals with firsthand knowledge of unreported programs view your arrival in this position as an opportunity for a new start. AARO was created by Congress to do this work. Congress waived non-disclosure agreements for those who disclose information to AARO and gave AARO the authority to go and turn over every rock. I hope those with information to share use this opportunity so that we, as your senators who represent you, can do our jobs. I look forward to hearing more on these issues from Dr. Kosloski and for members to start a dialogue on this important topic. With that, I would like to turn to Senator Ernst for her opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Kosloski. Our hearing today is about identifying UAPs and understanding their potential implications, which could range from technological advancements to potential threats to our national security. Are these phenomena tied to foreign adversaries such as China or Russia, leveraging advanced technologies beyond our current capabilities? Or do they represent unknown scientific phenomena that challenge our current understanding? We must answer these critical questions to ensure that our national security is not compromised. It is vital that all agencies work in tandem to aggregate data, identify patterns, and develop robust analytical frameworks. Our ability to detect, track, and respond to UAPs requires the latest technology and full cooperation from all government branches. Thanks very much, Dr. Kosloski, for your attention to this matter, and I look forward to the valuable insights that you and AARO can provide to our committee, and I yield back. Thank you.
Dr. Kosloski, please make your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gillibrand, Ranking Member Ernst, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. It is a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Department of Defense as the new Director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a status update on AARO's work and respond to your questions about unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAP. On behalf of the department and the entire AARO team, I want to say how grateful we are to Congress for its continued support. Unidentified objects in any domain pose potential threats to U.S. safety and security. Reports of UAP activity, particularly near national security sites, must be treated seriously and investigated with scientific rigor by the U.S. government. By way of introduction, I'm Jon Kosloski. I'm a researcher at my core with an academic background in mathematics, physics, and engineering. I've spent most of my career at the National Security Agency, leading advanced research in the areas of optics, computing, and cryptomathematics. By nature, I am drawn to tough scientific problems, which is what brought me to AARO and the UAP mission. Since I arrived at AARO in August, I've been impressed by the breadth and depth of my team's experience and the framework they've established to rigorously analyze UAP reports. AARO has taken meaningful steps to improve data collection and retention, bolster sensor development, effectively triage UAP reports, and reduce the stigma of reporting UAP events. Last year, AARO worked with the DoD's Joint Staff to issue guidance to defense personnel worldwide on how to report UAP observations and is working with the military services regarding implementation. AARO has also launched a public website that features UAP imagery, case resolutions, material analysis, archival records, and more. These are only a few examples of AARO's recent progress, and we're just getting started. To date, AARO has over 1,600 UAP reports in its holdings from across the U.S. government. I'll share a slide in just a few minutes with updated UAP analytic trends. You'll see that many reports resolve the commonplace objects like birds, balloons, and unmanned systems, while others lack sufficient data for comprehensive analysis. Although only a small percentage of reports received by AARO are potentially anomalous, these are the cases that require significant time, resources, and a focused scientific inquiry by AARO and its network of partners. It is important to underscore that, to date, AARO has not discovered any verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology. To accomplish AARO's national security mission, I have set 3 priorities for the office: building strong partnerships, promoting transparency, and scaling up the work of the office. AARO cannot do its work alone. Building partnerships across government, academia, industry, and with the public is essential to the success of the office. Strong cooperation with the military services is particularly important. We rely on their support to implement our reporting guidance and to amplify the message that there should be zero stigma associated with UAP reporting. We also rely on partnerships with the national labs, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, NASA, all of which play a role in the whole of government effort to address UAP. Recognizing the talent and expertise that reside outside of the government, AARO will continue to explore new ways to partner with the academic and scientific communities to investigate its most complex UAP cases. A related priority for AARO is transparency. Our ability to collaborate with key partners, including the scientific community and the public, relies on information sharing, to include downgrading and declassifying UAP-related information. In some cases, it may be unclear to the public why the DoD classified a piece of information in the first place. Why are photos of seemingly benign objects such as balloons classified? It's often the case that an object or phenomenon isn't itself a security concern, but the location, source, or method used to capture it is still sensitive. Many cases are difficult to quickly release to the public, but are reported to the appropriate committees in Congress that are authorized by law or House and Senate leadership to receive the information. It is important to note that AARO does not unilaterally declassify information. Instead, we work with the originator of a classified record to ensure that declassifying that record does not inadvertently harm national security. This can take time. Nonetheless, the department is committed to declassifying and publicly sharing more information on UAP while protecting sensitive sources and methods. I'll be sharing some newly declassified imagery in just a few minutes. AARO is also working closely with the National Archives and Records Administration to make UAP-related documents publicly available in a digitized collection. Meanwhile, AARO continues to review the U.S. historical record relating to UAP. We welcome any former or current government, civilian, contractor, or military service member with relevant information to reach out to us at www.aaro.mil. My final priority is scaling up AARO's work to match its mission. AARO needs to bolster the quantity, quality, and diversity of data that it acquires and examines. This means tapping into existing data sources within the interagency while deploying AARO's own organic sensor capabilities. To the extent that UAP results from the domain awareness gaps, more and better data will help us fill those gaps and help us understand what is being encountered. In closing, AARO is committed to the highest standards of scientific integrity. We will not foreclose on any explanation for UAP prematurely. We will continue to follow the science and data wherever they lead. We will continue to have an open and frank dialogue with Congress in settings like these and in classified briefings. We will continue to keep you fully and currently informed of all UAP information, active or historical. And finally, we will share as much information as possible at the unclassified level to inform the public of AARO's activities and its findings. For now, I'd like to turn to a brief presentation of UAP trends and cases, and then I'd be happy to take questions. Okay, this chart represents the UAP reporting since 1996, and as has previously been discussed by AARO, that sensor placement seems to have caused a bias in our data, both geographic and at altitude. And we're working to resolve that bias in 2025 or reduce that bias through broader engagements with the DoD as well as the IC and the rest of the government, also by incorporating broader sensors into our data and through a public reporting mechanism that we hope to have live in mid-2025. On the left side, it shows the altitudes, and we'll see it's a bit cut off. We'll see that most of the reporting occurs between 15,000 and 25,000 feet. That happens to be where most of our sensors are. And the reporting above and below that is also often coming from those same platforms. In the center, we'll see that the resolved cases have the vast majority being balloons and UAS. We're seeing a great increase in satellites recently, particularly with the launch of mega satellite constellations such as Starlink, where the satellites are catching what is called satellite flares or glint off the sun just after sunset or just before sunrise. And on the rightmost, we'll see the morphology or the shapes that have been reported. The majority have been lights or orbs. We think that there's going to be an increase in the lights with the mega constellations, but our most interesting cases, some of which I'll discuss later, are actually the shapes such as the triangles or the cylinders. And at the bottom, we'll see the geographic bias that I mentioned before, where most of the reports historically had been near the government sites. This bias has been reduced recently by reporting from the FAA. We now get weekly reports from them. And great thank you to our aviators for making those reports. It helps our analysis quite a bit. Okay, a case that we thought would be a transmedium case as it was reported is well known on the outside, known as the Puerto Rico case. It was data collected in 2013 when a Customs and Border Patrol aircraft observed an object flying near an airport in Puerto Rico. The green line in this diagram is the track that the airplane was taking, and those many crossed lines are the directions that the camera was facing at the time that the airplane was flying around the airport, and we'll watch the video in just a moment. The orange arrow in the center is where we assess that the UAP was actually flying, and transmedium means that it goes from one domain into another. In this case, it looks like it goes from the air into the water and then back into the air. We assess that it was actually flying over the airport the entire time. And this video was taken with infrared, and what appears to be the transmedium part where it goes into the water is actually where the temperature of the water is equal to the temperature of the object, and the camera can no longer distinguish between the two. It's not that the object actually goes into the water. And so we assess that the object, likely a pair of balloons or sky lanterns, was floating at about 7 knots over the airport and descending to about 200 meters. And this video will be released, and our report will be released later this year. The Go Fast was captured the public attention and congressional attention when it was made public in 2017. Looks like an object flying very fast over the water, very close to the water. Through a very careful geospatial intelligence analysis using trigonometry, we assess with high confidence that the object is not actually close to the water, but is rather closer to 13,000 feet. Diagram here shows as the platform is flying and capturing the object, if it is closer to the platform at a higher altitude, a trick of the eye called parallax makes it look like the object is moving much faster. And so we've written a detailed paper on parallax, released that on our website so that the public can literally check our math on this analysis. An interesting case, which I don't believe the public is familiar with, is captured in 2018 from a UAV flying in the Mediterranean, watching Mount Etna as it was erupting. And it appears that that object is flying through the plume of superheated gas and ash. This was a rather difficult case to resolve. We had to pull in support from a number of IC and S&T partners and even reach out to a volcanologist. And through very detailed 3D modeling and pixel-by-pixel analysis of the object as it's traversing across the clouds, they assessed that the object was actually 170 meters away from the plume and not flying through it. And to be clear, AARO does not believe every object is a bird, a balloon, or a UAV. We do have some very anomalous objects. It's just the nature of resolution. We can only resolve things that we understand. So we're now working on additional products where we can inform the public, Congress, and others of the objects as we're studying them, rather than once we've resolved them. With that, I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kosloski. I appreciate your testimony. It's been widely reported that individuals claiming firsthand knowledge of unreported UAP programs have been reluctant to engage with AARO. What message do you have for those individuals, and how will you work to gain their trust?
I would let them know that Congress has gone out of its way to create the organization AARO specifically to conduct these sorts of investigations, and has uniquely empowered them to have access to all UAP-related information, whether that's historic or current. Mm-hmm. And we take that responsibility and those authorities very seriously. And so we have been reaching out to a broader community, encouraging folks who had talked to AARO personnel in the past and maybe felt uncomfortable to come back to us. We've met with several of their interlocutors and a couple of firsthand witnesses, and we are making great progress, and those firsthand witnesses that we have talked to do feel comfortable coming back to us. Mm-hmm. And so we hope that more folks that do have information would go to www.aero.mil, fill out the form, send it to us so we can bring them in for interviews and add their information to our investigations.
Thank you. I recently just read your report from March, your historic report, and I would encourage anyone who's interested in this topic to read the report, because when I was asked by a reporter about it, they said, well, it doesn't show any evidence of secret programs that have aliens. That's not how I read the report. What I read the report is the U.S. government took sightings extremely seriously over the last 75 years, put some of the greatest minds ever to analyze these cases because they assess them as some deeply unknown phenomena that may or may not cause threats, that may or may not be related to adversaries, but are certainly something that the U.S. government needed to know about. And what I read from this report is that we resolved numbers of cases, but in almost every instance, whether it was in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the noughts, half the cases were unresolved. So I don't think this is an example of the government not taking these cases seriously. I think this is an example of our government spending 75 years taking these cases very seriously. And interestingly, for the group that put together this report, they didn't have access to any firsthand reporting. And so from my perspective, for whistleblowers and people who want to come in, please come in, because the purpose of AARO is so that the senators can do our job to provide oversight, accountability, and transparency. We find it very concerning that our pilots, that our Navy officers, that people who have sightings of UAPs are denigrated, are somehow dismissed or disregarded. They need to be protected. This is a huge issue for national security because, number one, we don't have domain awareness, which is very problematic. Number two, we don't have domain superiority if we don't understand how different UAPs are flying, what technology they're using, what their mission is, what their purpose is. And at the base level, we have so many UAPs around our bases, around our military sites, around our nuclear sites, that it's deeply disturbing that adversaries at a minimum could be using these opportunities to spy, to glean intelligence that will harm our long-term national security. So I'm grateful that you're taking the whistleblowers very seriously. I'm grateful that AARO is trying its best to integrate the private sector, the public, into their work. Interestingly, in this hearing, we heard that the FAA is now working hand in glove, which is very helpful. We want this public-facing accessibility to be put in place by 2025 so that people can upload their videos, their data, their reports. I've met with people who have followed this issue for decades, and they have thousands of examples, thousands of pieces of data that ultimately I want uploaded into AARO so you can cross-reference historic information with current information, because this group at AARO are the best scientists that we can find anywhere, and they will do the work that's needed to be done. So I just want to thank you for that. And then with my last 42 seconds, can you tell us about any of the cases that merit further analysis by your IC and science and technology partners? What is it that makes these cases anomalous? And a large number of reports are placed in the active archive because AARO does not have enough information. What might prompt you to reopen a case like that, and do you have any examples?
Sure, I'll start with the active archive case. So that is just the place where we put cases where we don't have enough scientific information to resolve them at that time, but we're always looking for opportunities to correlate them to new cases that come in, as the new cases come in, as well as enrich those cases with additional data. We do have one example that I'm aware of where we were able to correlate a number of observations of interesting lights in the sky, and eventually we concluded that it was multiple people observing Starlink flares, just as an example. 3 cases that merit analysis that we're working on right now. One we might be in the process of resolving, but nonetheless is still interesting. The first one was brought to us by a law enforcement officer out west, where he observed a large orange orb floating several hundred feet above the ground a couple miles away. He went to investigate what was going on with that orb. And as he was pulling up to the location where he thought would be below the orb, about 40 to 60 meters away from some object the area was well lit, he saw a blacker than black object. He said it was about the size of a Prius, 4 to 6 feet wide. And as he got 40 to 60 meters away from the object, it tilted up about 45 degrees, and then it shot up vertically. He says 10 to 100 times faster than any drone he's ever seen before. And it did that without making a sound as far as he could tell from inside of his vehicle. And just as it left his field of view through his windshield. Then it emitted very bright red and blue lights that illuminated the inside of his vehicle as brightly as if someone had set off fireworks just outside his vehicle or street flares. So that's anomalous because of the size of the vehicle with the great acceleration. And when he came back to investigate that area, he found no disturbance of the ground beneath it. So that's one interesting one. Another one comes to us from Southeast US. There was a US facility where 2 cars of government contractors were leaving the facility around 9 o'clock in the morning. They looked up in the sky and saw a large metallic cylinder about the size of a commercial airplane, and it was stationary. They observed that there was a very bright white light behind or around the object. They saw it stationary for 15 to 20 seconds, and then it disappeared. Obviously, an object that large, stationary, unless it's a blimp, is unusual, but then disappearing, we can't explain how that would happen. And then the last case was interesting. We had a aircraft that was flying parallel to another aircraft, and it was capturing imagery of it, and a small-looking object appeared to fly between the two of them much faster than them. Through very careful analysis, we think that the object might have actually been further away than the object that it was videotaping, but it requires very careful analysis to come to those conclusions, and we don't have the metadata to support that yet.
Senator Ernst.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Kosloski, you mentioned that you do work with the intelligence community. You're working with the FAA. Has AARO involved academia? Have you gone to universities? Do you have outside organizations that you are working with? And if so, can you walk us through some of that collaboration?
Sure. Right now, most of our collaborations that are veering towards academia are with university-affiliated research centers associated with universities or with FFRDCs. Our partnership with universities, I would say, is lacking right now. We have some one-off associations with university professors. However, that's our fault, and it's largely because of the need to declassify data. We need to give the professors something to work on before we can really engage them. So we're working significantly on a declassification effort. We've hired a number of declassification experts, and we're going to be trying to get cases like the ones that I just discussed here declassified so that we can engage with the universities on a regular basis and provide them the data. Talking to a scientist without data is going to be rather disappointing. So hopefully in 2025, we'll be increasing those efforts.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I think there's a huge pool of talent out there that you should tap into. Given the public's growing concern and interest in UAPs, how do you balance the need for the transparency that our public is demanding with the potential risks of revealing classified defense information?
Yeah, that's always a concern that's on the front of our minds. We want to make sure that we're deconflicting both on potential U.S. programs and what the IC might be tracking for adversarial programs as we're aggregating that information and preparing to share it. However, oftentimes we can remove the discussion of the unidentified and anomalous activity from the sensitive information that our partners are concerned with. And that's usually going to be the platforms that the information was collected with if it is truly anomalous. And so we have our partners working alongside in the declassification of that data.
Very good. And then without having to explain the UAP, what do we need to begin really doing about them? What precautions can we take? What should we be doing about them?
I think that removing the stigma, reducing the stigma is the first step. We need to make sure that we're having honest and transparent conversations about them, because if we're hesitant to discuss them, then it opens the opportunity for an adversary, as you had mentioned earlier, Senator Gillibrand, to come in and conduct some activity. So we need to do that, and we need to have more persistent monitoring and understand that whether it is a UAP or a counter-UAS issue, that we need to have that complete domain awareness around our national security facilities.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just a couple of follow-up questions. We didn't discuss in this setting the most recent UAP or UAS encounter with bases like Langley. I know that the incursion by UASs that were publicly made available through the press that took over 2 weeks was fairly alarming to senators because there was a question about what technology they were using. There was a question about why it was so hard to detect. Can you speak to how AARO will be integrated into the review of these kinds of cases and how you can be helpful to both the intelligence community and the Department of Defense in analyzing or being able to more quickly analyze what's knowable and what's not knowable so that because once you do identify it as a drone, for example, it then goes to the right department at DOD or the intelligence community to assess, deal with, or take down as the incident might be. But talk to us a little bit about what role you can play for both the DOD and the IC community in these kinds of incursions that are happening when we don't know what tech is being used and we don't understand a flight pattern or we don't understand how they arrive and depart in the way they do.
Yeah, we are generally going to be supporting them through an advisory capacity as an organization that naturally needs to conduct baseline experiments of the environment to see what normal looks like, whether it's balloons, birds, anomalous activity, or drones flying through an environment. We're going to gather a lot of data that will allow us to characterize an environment very well and then detect and follow those tracks, hopefully rather efficiently. There's also a lot of overlap in the type of sensors that are going to be used for the counter-UAS mission and the UAP mission, whether that's active detection like radars or passive like cameras. And so as AARO is trying to push the bounds on detectability for UAP, we're hopefully going to have best practices that we can also provide to the counter-UAS, and potentially we might have additional technologies that we can offer them to support.
I'd like to just address a little bit of reporting and feedback. As you know, AARO is required to develop a mechanism for the public to report UAP information. Now that that mechanism for current and former military, civilian, and contractor personnel has been established, can you speak to AARO's plans for a public reporting mechanism, and how did AARO arrive at this approach, and were other options considered? And second, for pilots and operators who have reported a UAP, what feedback, if any, has AARO provided to these individuals related to what AARO is doing with their report and how the report has been resolved? How does such feedback or lack thereof impact the frequency of UAP reporting?
Yeah, the public reporting mechanism that we've decided to go with is going to look similar to the reporting mechanism that we currently have for historical events, where we're going to ask folks to go to our website, download a PDF form, put in the narrative for their account, and then email that to us with accompanying media. Usually it'll probably be imagery. We went with that option because we thought, one, we could do it rather quickly, we could do it efficiently, make it very cost effective for the taxpayer, but also we think we can gather all the data that we're going to need to conduct our analysis. And then we're going to have that feed into an automated processing system that will cross-correlate that against all the other public reported cases as well as the US government cases. We did consider a number of other reporting mechanisms as to include automated online forms as well as cell phone apps. And we ultimately decided that this would be the safest, cheapest, and easiest to maintain in the future while protecting the private information of the individuals who are reporting. Regarding the feedback from the resolved reports, right now we don't have a good feedback mechanism. It's fairly informal. We're working on building a case management system that AARO will use at all classification levels, and hopefully in that we'll be able to provide feedback as the case is going through the resolution process. We have multiple phases. Then the folks who report that, whether it's a pilot at the classified level or someone potentially reporting through another mechanism, they'll get that automated feedback. And then it is not determined at this point yet how much information we'll be able to include in that feedback where it is in the process. It'll depend on the classification of the resolution of the case.
My final question is there anything that you need to tell the Senate that you need from us, whether it's funding, whether it's support, whether it's legislation, is there any requests that AARO has of us or anything else you need to brief us on for us to be able to do our jobs to protect our service members as well as integrate public interest and public data and information into the future analysis efforts of AARO?
So first of all, I want to say thank you again. I think that the authorities that we have are remarkable, and I think that we are well-resourced as an office. The only ask that I would have is that you continue to champion us, particularly with witnesses, encourage them to come forward and report to us so that we can have a more fulsome investigation of the potential historic or ongoing legacy programs.
Thank you so much. Hearing adjourned.
Wow. Okay. That was, I'm going to mute this. So that was Dr. Jon Kosloski. He went to the Dr. Sean K. Kirkpatrick University. He is clearly, in my view, carrying the same water as before. Sean, your initial thoughts.
You know, everybody said the right thing and nobody said anything. Senator Gillibrand identified cases that could easily be discussed, like Tic Tac, for example, which I was present for. But they're not brought up. The methods and sources and locations on that are all well known, except for a few of the systems. And the fact is it keeps getting pushed down the road. I saw someone who is a better speaker than Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and as I said, he said all the right things, but his next chance up to bat will prove whether he has anything to offer or not.
Yeah, for sure. Vinnie, what do you think?
It seemed like he was trying to correct and right a lot of wrongs that Sean Kirkpatrick had brought in, almost begging witnesses that had already spoken with AARO previously to come back, give us another chance. We'll treat you better this time. Maybe it's too little, too late. It's very clear that there are a lot of hoops for AARO to jump through for any semblance of credibility or seriousness. I don't know if it's just been lost. It's too little, too late. With the implementation of some of their new systems, not till mid-2025, it's a long road ahead. And just looking at the comments there, nobody's happy with them at all. So maybe it's a lost cause.
Yeah, I'm just kind of speechless about the whole thing. One of the things that caught my eye or ear was there was absolutely no talk about last week's hearing. I mean, it is like that hearing never even took place. So I just don't understand how this Dr. Kosloski couldn't even bother mentioning it. And I do wish, and I am a big fan of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. I do believe that we would not even be having this kind of hearing if it were not for her. But there was no mention of it. Sean, your thoughts as to why?
I saw a lot of pre-prep and a lot of deflection. I saw nothing of substance. It's really hard for me when a senator asks someone in charge of an office like AARO to discuss anomalies, and they discuss prosaic cases. They presented no anomalous information whatsoever. I'm not sure what we're doing. I understand that Senator Gillibrand, she has championed this to a great deal, but we need to see more aggressive questioning. We need to see people like we saw last week placed on the spot to answer some yes or no questions. We have no idea what AARO has really been up to. Have they discovered anything, or is this just one big boondoggle?
Yeah, I would say it's one big boondoggle. And Ronak Patel, someone that was actually out in Washington D.C. helping us at a UAP Disclosure Fund. We were really grateful for his help. He found this on Twitter. X. So if anyone wants to know how close Dr. Kosloski's handler is, look no further than just a few feet away. So on your left there is Pentagon Public Affairs Officer who has I think a master's in psychological warfare. If I remember right, that's what Lue Elizondo pointed out. So there on the left, Sue Go, Pentagon Public Affairs Officer, where literally any public media inquiry regarding the UAP issue goes through her, goes through a psychological warfare officer. I mean, you just can't make this shit up. It's insane.
Well, she literally wrote a portion of the book on psychological warfare and has also written papers on shaping operations in a domestic sense, utilizing media and other outlets. It's pretty clear that at least one person is holding some puppet strings. The question is who's holding Susan's?
Yeah, well, that is a good question. Vinnie, one of the things that he said or appeared to try and debunk was the Aqua Dia thing. And I didn't catch all of it. I was doing a couple of technical things, but I noticed someone in the chat said that Dr. Kosloski explained it away as a Chinese balloon. Is that correct?
I was kind of paying mixed attention to different things, making some notes. But what it seemed, it was a very rushed, quick presentation. He didn't point to it being completely debunked. I think it was just a very whimsical attempt at saying that they've done something with it, and these are the things that he was focusing on. Whereas the focus for me should have been on what we had in the recent AARO report. They've got 900 outlier cases in their active archive. 3.5% of them could represent breakthrough technologies or something genuinely anomalous. I think that's where the focus should have been a little bit more, to persuade Congress that these are what they're really looking to deal with, rather than just everything else. It seems like smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors indeed. And if I remember correctly, it was either, I don't think it was Senator Gillibrand, I think it was Dr. Kosloski that said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may have misheard it, that AARO had all of the authority it needed to investigate these claims. Did I imagine that, or is that exactly what was said?
You heard that right. That was towards the end there. This is where Sean Kirkpatrick last time, he clearly didn't have the authorities. Kosloski was very adamant that he had everything he needed in that respect. And so no excuses going forward.
Go ahead, Sean, please.
How does one call up to the CIA and say, give me all of your stuff on UAP? And they go, we got nothing. And you say, okay. Is that all the authority that you need, is to make a phone call and to accept what another department head or another civil servant tells you about a 100-year, 80-year cover-up? This is blatantly ridiculous that they can't find anything to work on.
Blatantly ridiculous as well. And there's something, we mentioned this on the show a while back. There is something that's called Special Agent Authority, or 1811 Authority. 1811 Authority, if you're a special agent, you can carry a gun, you have subpoena power, you have the power to arrest. You're essentially acting, you have the authority to act as a law officer to conduct a proper investigation. AARO has no 1811 authority, period. They have no subpoena authority. They have no authority to break down doors. They cannot go to Lockheed Martin or any other place and demand to be let in to see what is there. They do not have the proper investigative authority, period, the end. AARO telling you that is a bunch of bullshit. Jon Kosloski, he should know better. This is something that Kirkpatrick went on about. And the fact is, legally, they do not have the authority they need to be digging this stuff up. Vinnie, do you think that this guy is Kirkpatrick 2.0? Is he just more polished, or is he just doing what people up the chain are telling him to do? Any thoughts?
I think there's a mixture there. There's a little bit of everything that you just said there. I think he was clearly nervous. I think, we can give him that. But at the same time, he seemed to still be going for the low-hanging fruit when it came to some of the things he discussed. And I think he should have been a bit more prepared to kind of put it out there a bit more, give us some confidence back to the general public and to the Senate. I mean, Gillibrand was holding no punches back there. She was straight in there, knew what she wanted to say. It was really quite good to see, because we hadn't heard a lot from her in the past few months. It almost felt like maybe she'd kind of given up a little bit, but she came back full force today. And I think, that put him on the spot a little bit, but still too little, not enough.
It's indeed. Sean, any What do you think? Kirkpatrick 2.0, or is he just doing what the folks up the chain are telling him to do?
You know, I want to be nice. I want to be nice to the new doctor and say that he was on the spot today and that he deserves a chance. But we did the same thing with Dr. Kirkpatrick, and today was an opportunity to shine. We've had drone incursions over Langley recently. We've got things like the 2004 Tic Tac incident, which was over a nuclear vessel and a fleet of warships. Why are you showing us balloons off of Puerto Rico? If that's what you got, why is the Unidentified Anomaly Office only showing us identified things?
Yeah, exactly. The whole drone thing. So over the past several weeks, I've been speaking to a law enforcement leader in the middle of the country who had drone incursions over their town, over their county, over 200 drone incursions, and I'm using the word drone with quotes because it's my belief these are not drones. This particular police chief said that there were over around 200 drones or 200 of these vehicles appearing over their town over a 2-week period. Between 100 to 150 or so 911 calls. These things were viewed by multiple law enforcement officers. None of the drones, and this is something that you heard also on the Langley thing, none of these drones made any noise. That is the key. None of them made any noise. So when I hear this guy basically saying, and this is something that I sort of a refrain that I think that we're hearing all the time is, you're hearing it from, you've heard it from NASA, you're hearing it from AARO as, you know what, we need to spend a bunch more money and put out some sensors and let's figure out what this new thing is that's going on. He mentioned something regarding AARO and Langley, and that how AARO will be integrating a new sensors to take sort of baseline measurement. So in other words, use these sensors, look at the sky, and figure out what's normal, and so that when we have 200 of these drones flying over the Air Force Base, we'll know what they are. The logic just seems ridiculous. Go ahead, Sean.
Matt, can I interject for a second?
Please.
I spent my career as an anti-terrorism specialist, and every nuclear facility, every vessel, every United States military installation has in place anti-terrorism response procedures for low, slow flyers. That's what we call them, okay? It might differ between services, but the fact is we've been dealing with autonomous and remotely controlled aircraft and ready for that fight for a very long time, even before they became as common as they are now. The fact is there in all of those places, there's a standard operating procedure for the personnel to respond to that, for intelligence gatherers to take photographs, for capture of data from all of the systems that are in the area, to include surveillance, personal phones, etc. The idea that we don't know what's going on over Langley is insane. It's kind of like when we shift the conversation over to something that, yes, is very important, which is aircraft safety, but at the same time that is kindergarten level stuff to what the conclusions are from some of these things.
I could follow up on that
Please.
as well, Matt. Sorry. Just to add in, they're talking about getting baselines for these things. They must have these baselines already. Some of these drones have been reported to as big as 20 meters in diameter, I believe. We have the US has some of the most advanced anti-drone technology going, I think. The drone busters failed at Langley on multiple occasions. They must have all this data. Where are these things coming from? Where are they going? This doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense. And for instance, this police chief that I have had the pleasure of speaking with, he described one particular. These folks refer to them as drones, but when you read, at least from these incidents, read the 911 call reports and whatnot, they're usually described as large balls of light. In one particular case, when he was going out to a call, he said that this thing was literally the size of his Ford F-150 pickup truck, and it just blows me away that they think that we're going to buy all of this BS, especially on this whole drone thing. And Sean, as you were pointing out, in terms of sensors, I went and just did some basic research on the unclassified ground radar systems at Langley, and I don't remember the acronym, but these were ground-based radars that are for the purpose of controlling the airspace in terms of aircraft going in and out, sort of like air surveillance radar. And just about, I think there were 4 systems that I saw. They all said that the aircraft, in order for targets to register, you didn't need a transponder. I think one system said it could measure any airborne target as small as like I think a basketball or something like that. So as you're pointing to, Sean, it's like I find it incredibly hard to believe that they do not have data on these things. So I guess my question to both of you, do you think that this sort of ignorance is an act? Is it a delaying tactic so that they can say, we need another year to collect data? What do you think the end game or the motivation is? Or do you really think that they just don't have it? Sean, you first.
I think that for this to have be kept secret for 100 years, whatever is the ultimate truth behind it is going to make some people lose their jobs. Let's put it that way. I don't think anybody wants to be left holding the bag, and no one wants to look like a fool if they make some kind of pronouncement that they've been given without the physical evidence that's required to stand behind those convictions. This is a lousy place. This is a time when the executive branch and the legislative branch need to come together, and they need to give us a clear history of what's been going on. We've received no definitive answers on what's been going on for the last 80 years. Is this just an arms race? Is it a cover-up between our advanced programs? Is this something truly unknown? Anybody who investigates this as a profession, so to speak, will find that it is very clearly laid out that this is not a nothing burger. And it's the idea we're going to keep kicking it down the road is very disheartening.
Vinnie, one thing a phrase or refrain that we've heard quite a bit is this phrase of no evidence of verifiable extraterrestrial activity. Why do they continue to use the word extraterrestrial? To me, it seems by design.
I think it's by design and somewhat lazy at the same time. I mean, in this recent transcript that I think was released from a meeting with Kosloski the other day, there seem to be some contradictions in there, almost saying we've seen no sign of this. We've seen no sign of advanced technology or breakthrough technologies. But then, when pressed by the press further into the interview part of that meeting, he said, well, some of it obviously could be because we don't know what they are. So he's almost taking it back a little bit and switching things up. So it's just a little bit of the same old story, this continuation that we've seen for so long that probably is just hiding the embarrassment that they genuinely don't know what they're dealing with. They cannot control their airspace, and they cannot ultimately control the safety of the general public.
Yeah,
it's also...
Please.
It's very projective of their assumptions, and it's very projective of what they intend to deliver to us when there is no sense of urgency and no sense of seriousness around the first letter in their title.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that he also mentioned was he wants zero stigma, and I think at one point he was talking about that they are taking this seriously, that they want whistleblowers to come in and provide secure testimony. But how, when you have Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, the former director of AARO, basically making fun of anyone in a way that is involved with this, saying that there's nothing to it, and it's all circular reporting from a bunch of UFO zealots. If I were a whistleblower and I were hearing the guy that set up AARO, the guy that was the head of it, I don't know that I would certainly trust AARO, because it would seem like it's a trap, as whoever that guy in Star Wars said. It makes me insane. Vinny, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that loses a lot of trust, absolutely. But I think some trust had already been lost. We know as podcasters, we've spoken to certain witnesses who had went to AARO, Robert Salas, Mario Woods, to name a few. We know that their testimony was taken a lot of the times over the phone, sometimes not recorded. Brief notes were taken. It didn't seem like it was being taken seriously. It doesn't show a lot of trust in what they were talking about. Then you have Dr. Kirkpatrick coming out with such bold and embarrassing statements that he made. Of course, there's going to be no trust. This is why we heard and saw whistleblowers going directly to members of Congress and just completely circumnavigating around AARO. They've got a lot of work to do to even bring the trust back to allow that to happen going forward.
Sean, if you were a whistleblower, would you go into AARO today and spill the beans?
No, I would not. I don't see a comprehensive investigation coming out of the information being given to AARO.
Do you think that whistleblowers are jeopardizing their safety by going to AARO, or jeopardizing their identity?
Well, I've been privy to some of the disgusting tactics used by Susan Go and by others within the Department of Defense to try to silence certain people within the communities. Editing of Wikipedia pages, slandering, sending surrogates out to write blog posts and to defame people on forums like Reddit and Twitter. I'm not sure what we're going to get when that's the status quo.
Yeah, I don't think so. I certainly don't think that we're going to get any sort of forward movement. So in January, and this is some information most people may or may not be aware of. In January, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he was the NASA scientist debunker of the NASA UAP study. Sean Kirkpatrick and this guy are having a network special on PBS. It's not called Nova. Actually, it's Nova or something like that. But they essentially are debunking the Aqua Dia case and I think the other video as well. So it's probably like a carbon copy of what we saw today. Why do you think? And I put this to both of you. Any thoughts as to why Kirkpatrick continues to do this? I would think, like, if I worked for the government, I worked for DOD, I exited DOD and picked up a job at DOE, my bosses at DOE would say, "Hey man, you're talking, you need to stay in your lane." Is this, they're just giving him free rein? Is this by design? Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's obvious the way that Mr. Kirkpatrick is behaving benefits someone. And those that seem to prop him up are those that have some kind of motivation to not discuss this topic, to not bring any of the great conclusions that the American people and the world in general are entitled to. So I just see a patsy. I see someone who's going to cash in where he's told he was allowed to go have fun. He's going to go have fun. And as many seem to take very serious, they take very serious things these days, and they think that being a troll and being a disruptor in them is somehow what people need. And it's not. They need trust, they need faith, and they need answers.
Do you think that Sean Kirkpatrick, Vinny, out there parroting all of this stuff, is this helping or hurting the conversation? And do you think it's intentional? He was just given loose reins, or do you think that there could be something more behind that?
It does almost certainly point to it being he's been directed to do it. He's had every opportunity to wash his hands of this subject, look forward to his cushy little job where at Oak Ridge, and breathe a sigh of relief that he no longer has to deal with this subject. Yet here he is. He keeps coming back, taking little digs. So it almost seems that there's an ulterior motive out there for the reason why he would even do that.
Yeah, I don't get it. Finally, so what is your sort of takeaway? Any other points that I've missed that you would like to bring up? I'll start with you, Sean. I have an adversarial attitude to people who get in front of the mic and say that
what we've all worked so hard on is nothing. But at the same time, I am very emboldened by what we've seen. If we'd spoken to any of us 10 years prior to now, we would be absolutely just over the moon with what we're seeing happen right now. We have to remember that these things do move slowly. They are moving faster behind closed doors. It's a question of getting people with integrity in front to tell us the truth.
Vinnie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think obviously it's going to take time. We heard some mid-2025 dates thrown forward there. I think what I'm going to be really looking out for is when the general public are able to submit reports to AARO. Let's see how they deal with members of the public, if they give them the time, respect, and decency.
Indeed. So, Vinnie, where can we find your show, and any new guests on Disclosure Team that you would like to tell us are around the corner?
Yep, so you can find Disclosure Team on YouTube and most podcast platforms. I've got all sorts of guests lined up. I've got Tiago, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Lichetti or something. He featured recently in George Knapp's investigation, Alien, covering the Colares incident. So really looking forward to digging into that case. But yeah, lots more guests lined up.
Absolutely. Sean, you were recently on News Nation. Anything else coming up for you?
I'll be announcing soon a podcast I'll be doing with in conjunction with our NANU app called The Experience. We'll be announcing our guest list and some of the subjects we'll be going after. And very soon we'll be launching our app in its open beta. And we look forward to putting those dates out and providing links to everybody.
What can you tell us about this app? I'm very excited about this.
It's a social media app that looks to give people who study the phenomena and who have interacted with it, or maybe just generally curious about it, a place where they can go, where they can meet, where their data is protected, and where they can have a discussion about this with like-minded people, share their, very much like what AARO is trying to set up, but not a forum with a PDF that you fill out, something that's interactive and something that has community management, where the stigma is not applied and where everyone has a safe place to have a conversation.
Excellent. And actually, we have a question from Shelley Montgomery, and folks at home, if you're watching, if you have any questions for Sean or Vinnie, now is the time to post those. Shelley Montgomery, Mr. Cahill, your thoughts on a possibility our company, or whatever they are, also watch just normal town power plants. Have any been spotted in these areas?
I've seen reports of UAP over power lines, over power transformers, substations, and things like that. It is a common experience, and I've even seen some of those reports that went up to the UAPTF at the time. So yes, that is pretty common. I hope we see more about that.
I think so too. I sometimes wonder if AARO's what seems to be reluctance to deal with the drone issue I think both of you guys would agree with this. There is a long history in UAP literature of UAPs using mimicry or signature management to appear as something prosaic or relatable to folks. There any kind of comparisons or examples of that either of you can give?
I think just continuing. Oh, sorry, Sean.
No, you go. You go ahead, Vinnie.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to continue on the drone incursions over kind of power plants and nuclear facilities. We have to remember that these have been reported in the last 5 to 6 years in other countries such as Sweden, Germany. There have been quite a lot of media headlines overseas about that, and nothing really ever came of them either. Now, we had AARO in the report talking about alliances with a lot of the kind of Five Eyes, and that wasn't mentioned today. Hopefully, we start to see more of that sort of conversation happening across the seas.
Absolutely. Sean, you were going to add something.
Oh, Vinnie got it.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, awesome. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming on. I hope that this is the first of more hearings from AARO, but I don't know. I was a bit underwhelmed, to be honest.
Yeah,
we have a lot to do.
We have a lot to do. That is for sure. Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to having you back on the show. And thanks for taking your time, both of you guys, for coming on. And Vinnie, I'll be on your show hopefully soon. And Sean, I look forward to your podcast.
Good to see you, gentlemen.
Okay, thanks, great. Matt. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just. So here's the deal. When we want to talk about whether we can trust AARO, I'm going to read a statement. I'm going to pull it up here that I put hopefully to be picked up by Congress. I don't have a screenshot of it, but I'm going to pull it up here in just a second. So I'm kind of doing this on the fly. So this was something that I wrote that I think very well may end up being entered into the congressional record. I'll know more about that here in a bit. A written statement of Matthew Ford for the U.S. Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Subcommittees on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation, National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs. Unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth, which of course was this hearing. In the statement, here's what I say. Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Members Conley and Garcia, and members of the committee. I'm Matthew Ford, an American journalist and host of the Good Trouble Show podcast. Today I'm introducing damning information regarding the former director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick. I'm a patriot who cares deeply about our nation's security, but above all, I care about the truth. In November of last year, journalists Christopher Sharp, Josh Boswell, and I published a story in the Daily Mail exposing for the first time the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology's Office of Global Access and its classified UAP crash recovery program. Last weekend, Christopher Sharp published a follow-up article in the Liberation Times providing further detail on how the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology operates its UAP-related crash recovery and reverse engineering programs through the Office of Global Access and the CIA's Counter-Proliferation Mission Center, or WCPMC. The head of the Directorate of Science and Technology serves as the primary gatekeeper of the entire UAP Deep Legacy program. Again, the head of the Directorate of the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology serves as the primary gatekeeper of the entire UAP Deep Legacy program, overseeing operations such as detection of UAPs through classified programs, recovery operations, disbursement of recovered craft to government agencies and private defense contractors, and protection of derived off-world technologies. My sources have alleged that Glenn Gaffney, the former head of the Directorate of the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, is one of those gatekeepers. Last year, I revealed that Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, I revealed this on the Good Trouble Show for the very first time, that Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, the former director of AARO, had assembled a secret technical advisory group to counsel AARO. Following my story, Dr. Kirkpatrick confirmed the existence of this committee to members of Congress, but refused to disclose the members' identities. So Congress was asking Dr. Kirkpatrick, who is on this secret board that you have assembled, and Dr. Kirkpatrick, in typical fashion, refused to divulge those names. Multiple sources have confirmed that Glenn Gaffney, the former head of the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology and gatekeeper of the UAP Deep Legacy program, was handpicked by Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick to be on this advisory board. I emphasize this, I continue. I emphasize this. The most consequential person involved with the cover-up of non-human technology is advising the office which Congress has given a legal mandate to find it. This is an abomination, I continue. This is unconstitutional. This is criminal. Furthermore, this revelation is significant because one of AARO's primary missions is to provide a means for government whistleblowers to make protected disclosure on classified UAP special access programs and controlled access programs, or CAPS, to AARO and its staff. The fact that Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick chose as one of his primary advisors the very gatekeeper overseeing CIA-controlled UAP access programs raises serious questions about Dr. Kirkpatrick's true motives as the director of AARO. This reporting indicates that AARO may function as a fly-paper operation, intercepting whistleblowers' testimony and feeding their identities back to the CIA. You have heard that there are whistleblowers who don't trust AARO. My sources have informed me that this is one of the reasons why. If the CIA intercepts their testimony before it reaches Congress, whistleblowers are in grave danger. Therefore, I implore you to wield your subpoena powers against hostile witnesses, such as Glenn Gaffney, former PDD&I Stephanie O'Sullivan, and the former head of the CIA's Office of Global Access, Douglas Wolfe. Dozens of whistleblowers are depending on you. Thank you for your leadership and for your attention on this urgent matter. So here we have Dr. Kosloski saying to whistleblowers, "Hey, come on in. This is a new AARO." And I can tell you, as of 2 weeks ago, this secret technical advisory group advising AARO, put together by Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, and one of the primary folks on that technical advisory group is the very guy that is one of the primary gatekeepers of the CIA portion of this entire thing. So I say it again. The technical advisory group advising AARO, the group that Jon Kirkpatrick refused to tell Congress who is sitting on that panel, is one of the main gatekeepers. The head of was head, he's no longer there, but the head of the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology. Now, the head of CIA DS&T, guess who is under his or her jurisdiction? The CIA Office of Global Access. That position, the head of the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, oversees the CIA Office of Global Access, and also, and this is critically important when I talk about jeopardizing of whistleblowers' physical safety, their lives. The head of DS&T, who was Glenn Gaffney, would have had visibility into retaliatory measures taken by the security contractors working for the aerospace defense companies that have these goodies. I say it again. Glenn Gaffney, who was the head of DS&T for the CIA, under his responsibility, he would have had visibility and or involvement possibly in retaliation against whistleblowers. This includes physical threats. This includes kinetic retaliation. That position in the CIA would have had visibility that would have been part of their portfolio. So that's why I say in this letter to Congress, you have to subpoena these folks. You have to drag Glenn Gaffney, the former head of Office of Global Access, Douglas Wolfe. You've got to get all of these folks under oath in a skiff under the threat of perjuring themselves and ask them very direct questions. I can tell you multiple sources of former and current government employees specifically stated that former head of CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, Glenn Gaffney, has been involved in this UAP issue and the deep legacy crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Glenn Gaffney has been involved with this for a very, very long time. Those are the allegations. Now, do I have direct firsthand knowledge of that? No, because I don't work for the government. I do not hold a security clearance. But the way you get to the bottom of that and prove if those allegations are indeed true, and again, I'm hearing this from multiple people that were former or current government employees that worked this topic as part of their portfolio. All of them said Glenn Gaffney is highly, highly, highly involved with all of this. And that particular position, the head of the Directorate of Science and Technology for the CIA, is one of the primary gatekeepers of the Deep Legacy UAP Controlled Access Program. Now, why isn't that being asked at these hearings? That's what I want to know. It is high time that this happen. I mean, look, I'm trying to give Dr. Kosloski the benefit of the doubt. He certainly seems much more amenable. He's nowhere near as arrogant as Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. I certainly hope he can write above the fifth grade level. We know Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick literally, for whatever reason, cannot write a report that would even pass a fifth grade science class. So I am confident that Dr. Kosloski is a good step forward. But here's the thing, everyone at home, I want all of you to keep in mind. Lifers in government, they are still there because they are not risk takers. These senior executive service folks, they want their retirement. They want to sail off into the sunset. Of course, they want to do the right thing, and I think by and large they attempt to do so. But as a career government bureaucrat, there is zero incentive for any of these folks to buck chain of command. Zero. They don't want to jeopardize their retirement. They don't want to jeopardize their security clearance, which will ensure that they have employment post-government work. There is literally no incentive for them to do the right thing. So let's say that Dr. Kosloski was fully read in to the legacy UAP, the Deep Legacy UAP program, but his bosses, the folks up the chain of command from him, say, look, you can't go there. We don't want you to open these doors. If someone tells you to go open up door A because Lockheed Martin has something stuffed behind that door, do us a favor, just don't go opening it. We'll just tell you there's nothing behind that door. Dr. Kosloski is in a position where it's a no-win situation for him. People are going to go after him as we saw today with this performance, but he can't do. He can't go rogue. The guy doesn't want to end up in jail. He's obviously not going to leak anything that is classified, a classified special access or controlled access program. It is just not going to happen. The only way that this is going to happen is hopefully the Trump administration gives them a different directive and says, this has got to come out. And for anyone in the Trump transition team, I hope you're listening to this show. It is time to rip this Band-Aid off. This is, and I used to make fun of Trump all the time about this deep state stuff. I thought he was full of it, but it turns out Trump was right about a lot of it. And I'm, being nonpartisan here. But this is the ultimate deep state thing, if you want to call it that, even though it's a politically loaded term. But at the end of the day, you have a group of 50-ish or so senior executive service employees that are managing the special access programs and the controlled access programs and the programs in DOE. And all of this, half of it sits classified under the National Security Council, and the other half sits under the Department of Energy as transclassified foreign nuclear information. These 50-ish or so folks that we didn't vote in, that we never asked any of us what they think we should be doing about this whole UAP issue, these folks, folks of 50 or so senior executive service folks, they are the ones managing this. They are the ones gatekeeping this. They are the ones hiding this from American presidents. They are the ones hiding this from some secretaries of defense. And that, my friends, is an abomination of the Constitution of the United States. You cannot have a functional democracy when you've got the head of the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology calling the shots, deciding possibly what retaliatory measures against whistleblowers are okay. It was shared with me a while back what the CIA was up to in terms of retaliation against whistleblowers. And it made me want to go to the bathroom and vomit. It made me so sick as an American to know that this sort of rogue element in our government thinks that doing those sorts of things is okay. It's not okay. And the fact that you have a corrupt Department of Defense Inspector General's office operating, where if you are a whistleblower and you go and you file a PPD-19, Presidential Protected Disclosure 19 form, and you send that to the DOD IG to whistleblow on UAP special access programs that you think are illegal. And oh, by the way, when you do that, you know what's going to happen? The Pentagon Department of Defense Inspector General is going to leak those facts, the legally protected confidential disclosure you made. The DOD IG is going and leaking them. The DOD IG leaked details about David Grush's testimony. The DOD IG leaked testimony about Lue Elizondo. So here you have the DOD IG who's saying, come on in, give us the goods. We'll keep your identity secret. We'll keep your testimony classified or secret. But guess what? They're going to leak the non-classed stuff. Guess what? They're going to leak your name. Why are they doing that? So the DOD IG, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They're saying, folks, come on in, make a protected disclosure. We've got your back. None of this stuff will leak out. You can tell us everything you want in the skiff. Nothing is going to get leaked out. But their actions are different than their words. They leak these things. They leak whistleblower identities. They leak non-classed details regarding their testimony. And why are they doing that? They are sending a message to whistleblowers that while, yes, we may say we want you to come on in and tell us about all this governmental malfeasance, but the subtext is they do not want you to come in. Because if you do, you know what's going to happen. Your identity is going to get leaked. Certain details about your protected disclosure are going to be leaked. And oh, by the way, chances are, 9 times out of 10, your security clearance is going to get flagged. Now, why is that important? Folks that exit the government who have any sort of security clearance, TSSCI, secret, whatever, that is their golden ticket. When they exit government and they want to work on a classified program for any sort of government contractor that requires any kind of clearance, TSSCI, whatever, if they don't have that clearance, if their clearance is flagged, those former government employees, they cannot find a job. Period. The end. So think about it. You're an Air Force officer. You have, as part of your job, a TSSCI clearance and a bunch of different tickets for different SAPs that you were read in and then eventually read out of. And you want to go work for a Lockheed Martin or a Northrop Grumman. You go in for that interview and you think everything is okay. And during that interview, The security officer says, sorry, sir, sorry, ma'am, but there's a flag on your clearance. We cannot hire you because as part of this job, you need to be able to handle special access program level information. And since you don't have a clearance to view SAP materials, you're out of luck. I can tell you that this form of retaliation continues to this day. There are people whose clearances have been flagged and they cannot find a damn job. These folks that have served our country with distinction, worn the uniform, men and women who have decided to do the right thing and flag what are illegal things taking place within our government by going to the DODIG, the Pentagon throws them under the bus. They threaten them. They flag their security clearances. They ensure, the Pentagon ensures that if you are a whistleblower, good luck finding a job. You might as well work for Home Depot because you are not going to get a job that requires a security clearance because the folks that are part of the security infrastructure, the security officers that work the security aspect of special access programs and controlled access programs for the IC, they're going to flag your clearance. They're going to make damn sure you are not going to get a job because the Pentagon is hell-bent. They are hell-bent on retaliating against our men and women of uniform who are going against the grain. Men and women who have worn the uniform or served our government, served our country in some capacity. Folks that have decided, you know what, this is not right. What is happening behind the scenes is not right. And they had the courage to do the right thing. They had the courage to put duty above self, to put country above self. And what thanks do they get? They get their security clearance flagged. What thanks do they get? They have security contractors that go and put tracking devices on their cars. What thanks do they get? The CIA planning to do certain things I can't talk about here. Those are the things that Congress must subpoena these folks. They need to subpoena the head of DS&T, whoever the head is, the former head of DS&T, Glenn Gaffney, the former head of the CIA Office of Global Access. You need to throw them on the stand, make them swear under oath, and ask them really hard questions. Ask them, are they aware of or were they involved in any decision-making regarding retaliatory measures, either directly by the government or through the use of cutouts or through the use of government defense contractors and their security contractors? Were they aware and or involved in any of those retaliatory measures against government whistleblowers or potential government whistleblowers? That's what they should ask. They should ask, are they aware of where the money for a Boeing charging $8,000 for a bottle of a soap dispenser for an airplane? Let's say that that soap dispenser giving a generous offering, let's say that soap dispenser cost $1,000. Where did Boeing funnel that other $7,000? Guarantee you they funneled it into areas that they don't want us to know about. Congress must also subpoena the C-suite of all the major defense contractors. I'm talking Aerospace Corporation. I'm talking Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. They need to bring the corporate leadership in before Congress, put them under oath, and ask them exactly what they have been up to regarding any program, CAP, SAP, or any of their private programs involving technologies of unknown origin, or TUOs. They need to ask about UAPs. They need to ask what other funding mechanisms that are below the radar will say, funding mechanisms that they have to fund these projects. They need to ask what materials that should be in the government's possession they're not giving back. Those are the things that need to be asked. So, any whistleblowers that are potential whistleblowers that are asking themselves right now if they should go trust AARO and go testify, absolutely not. I would not recommend any government whistleblower, current or former, go to AARO. The mere fact that AARO, as of 2 weeks ago, has this secret technical advisory group, of which, at least at some point ago, Glenn Gaffney, former head of CIA Director of Science Technology, was part of. The other thing I can tell you as well, any members of Congress that are watching this, there are other members of AARO's advisory board, their technical advisory group, the group that they don't want to tell you who is on that group. There are a host of other members that you would probably flip your lid if you found out who is on that group. So Senator Gillibrand, anyone else watching this, if you want to know whether you can trust AARO, right now you need to demand the list of names of who is sitting on the AARO Technical Advisory Group. You're going to be floored, and you're going to be enraged. And I guarantee you, once you find out who is on that list, you're going to be asking a lot of questions and throwing a lot of people under oath, because what is going on is illegal, it is wrong. And furthermore, sending somebody to AARO when you've got the head of DS&T, one of the primary gatekeepers of the Deep Legacy program, I can tell you, he or she that is in that position right now, there is a damn good chance that any whistleblower that is going to AARO, that person sitting on that technical advisory group is likely funneling all of that information back to the CIA and back to the defense contractors. And it is the defense contractors that are the primary group that is engaged in retaliation against whistleblowers. So I absolutely, there is no way that I would recommend anyone go to AARO that has any concern about their safety, because there is just no guarantee that your identity and or what you're disclosing is not going to get funneled back to CIA, DS&T. It is probably going to get funneled back to the defense contractors who are at the end of the day are more concerned about power and their bottom line. You don't want to do it. It's not. It's just not worth it. So anyway, I really appreciate everyone joining the show today. Please tell your friends about us. We only can grow as fast as people will tell your friends about the show. Please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons. YouTube looks at those metrics and decides whether those signals are gonna encourage them to recommend our show to people that do not track the UAP topic. At the end of the day, as Lue Elizondo so eloquently stated at the hearing, this is about our democracy. This is about whether our constitutional republic survives. You cannot have a functioning democracy when you have a cancer, a malignant tumor that is eroding the very foundation of truth and what it means to be an American. You cannot have a democracy when the Pentagon throws under the bus the men and women that have worn the uniform in service to this country. It is unacceptable. It is wrong. It has got to come to an end.